How's everybody doing? Okay, so far this week, it's been a good, productive week. We've been in offensively, defense is arriving today. We're working football 24/7. When we're not installing our schemes, we're with the players, evaluating workouts, doing the formal and informal interviews. It's been a productive week. At this point, we're trying to get the flow for the new combine schedule. It's been good so far, and as it rolls, we'll let you know updates in terms of what we think about it. But at this point, I'll go ahead and open up to any questions you may have.
So you hired a lot of coaches with similar backgrounds to you, but places. As you get towards the roster building part of this process, is it important to you to bring in one or two guys who know the language that you're going to be talking?
No, the only priority is to bring in good football players who meet the values and principles of the organization. We're not trying to recreate anywhere we've been before. We have a lot of coaches with a lot of experience from different programs. We're interested in building the 2020 New York Giants, not recreating any other program we're part of.
Joe, what are some of those principles? I know you talked about those things, but
Well, I think the biggest thing you look for on the field is smart players who can execute the assignment, who can play situationally aware, tough guys, physically, mentally tough. Can they do what's right for the team when it's not always what's right for them? And can they play through some discomfort? And you want guys that play fundamentally sound. There are aspects you're going to evaluate. You look at the college game versus the pro game. For the most part, it's a different game, but athletes are athletes, and you have to evaluate what each guy is individually. There are things you can coach and teach, and there's things you can't coach and teach. I'm not going to coach anyone to be taller or really faster. Now, I can coach them to play faster by knowing their assignment better and anticipating what may come their way. But there's going to be certain traits that are critical factors that we have to identify in these players, whether it's a free agent joining our program or a college player that we may look to draft or sign as a free agent, that regardless of their past, we have to know skill set-wise what we're getting.
So we had a little more time to last year to evaluate the film of last year.
Yep.
What do you see from Daniel Jones?
So I'll kind of be very upfront with everyone right now in terms of how I'm going to deal with analyzing specific players. And I want you to understand this because it's important to me. Every one of our players is going to come here with a blank slate and be able to compete from the ground up from day one. And I'm not going to establish any kind of status or hierarchy within the individual players or position groups by spending a month talking about individuals. That's important to me, and I want you guys to understand my reason for that. I can't tell everyone that they've got an equal slate and they show up on April 7th and I've spent a month talking about a specific player. Okay? Everyone's going to have the same opportunity on a daily basis to compete. So I respect the question about the individuals. Trust me, we've analyzed everyone top to bottom, inside out. We've talked about it. Coaches, scouts, personnel, player development, team security. We're getting to know everything we can possibly know about who we have on our roster, as well as everyone looking to bring in and join our roster as well. But my reason for not going into individual players at this point is it's important that our players understand the only thing that's going to be relevant is how they perform from day one moving forward, that the past is irrelevant.
Quarterback seems like a little different position. I mean, don't you have to build your offense, around what your quarterback does well? And
we've got to build around everyone's skill set. So, yeah, you're right that, every position has to add into what you do schematically, but every position is going to be competition every day. Every position.
Will Daniel begin as your first quarterback when you do get it?
Our depth chart's on that board right there right now. No one's got a spot.
Joe, knowing that you guys play a lot of ways, do you think you're a first-time coach? Do you think you have questions to ask some of these players to get something out of them that somebody else here does not?
I'm not trying to compare myself to anybody else in terms of what they're looking for. I can tell you this, in terms of dealing with the college players, we've done as much research to this point as possible. And when we're here, it's very valuable to get the individual time with the players. However, it's a very limited window. 18 minutes for a formal interview isn't very long. So we've got to find the right questions on each player individually going into it. Some guys are maybe more football scheme. Some guys, it's teach them something, see how they learn, have them regurgitate it back to us. Other guys, maybe personality and character traits that we've got to investigate. So we've got to do our homework on the front end, which the scouts have done a tremendous job for. As coaches, we've got, brought currently on what we have to look into. And with the guys that we have selected for these interview times, we've got to find out, the necessary information. So I don't know if I've got a magical question that's going to tell me something more about anybody else. I don't know what anyone else is asking. I just know it's important to us, Paul.
Joe, how is the communication going amongst the coaching staff? We didn't have a full staff a couple weeks ago. So
Right. It's a unique situation when you have a new staff really kind of coming together at the same time, and you're not adding a single guy, you're adding an entire staff. The unique thing is all of our families are somewhere else. So we're at a apartment complex down the street from, the stadium, and it's basically like a college dorm. Not that we're having toga parties, but just in terms of we're together all the time. We're commuting back and forth. We're constantly talking ball. We're in early. We're working late. So this is a great time for us to build that camaraderie. Excuse me, that camaraderie and relationships that will carry us forward throughout the season. One thing you got to remember is the football season's a long season, okay? And once you come together, it's like a submarine. And when those doors close and you go underwater, it's just you and the team looking at each other on a daily basis. You have to establish, throughout the spring and training camp, who you are and the relationships you have that'll carry you through the tough times. Because there's going to be a point where the outside's not so rosy. And right now it's all big expectations and a lot of positive light. There's going to be a point where on the outside it's very dark and gloomy. And you've got to make sure you have the trust in each other inside that you can get through those times. Can you say one more time?
When you guys leave here at the end of the week, what's most important for you to take away from?
Well, a couple things. So we're spending this week not only with the combine duties, but we're meeting football-wise. And our offense and defensive staffs are installing the systems and the schemes together as we speak right now. When they're not in interviews or watching workouts, we're doing ball all the time. It's very important we don't lose this time as a staff to get on the same page that when the players show up on April 6th that we have answers and we can start moving in a direction. It's also important with the draft process that we come out of here with a better understanding of the players we're looking to add to our roster. And, there's going to be other opportunities after this through pro days, private workouts, 30 visits that we can dive deeper into certain players. But this may be the most exposure we get with certain players going into the process. So it's important that whatever questions we need answered, we clear them up as best as possible. Well, I've known Freddie for some time. Freddie's a tremendous coach. Freddie has a very good personality that touches a lot of guys in different ways. Freddie's a very tough-minded man, and he's a tough coach. And you watch the teams he's been part of, all right, they play with a toughness. They run the ball. They get after you. All right, so what I'm looking for Freddie to bring is work within our systems, our schemes, within our offense to contribute in the kicking game and bring an element of toughness as well as some schematic expertise that he's experienced other places that may fit what we're doing as a system or a game plan specifically. We don't have cheerleaders at the Giants either, from what I understand, so we weren't looking at them in the coaches' offices. The teaching part to me is critical. That's all you're doing. You're teaching. You're teaching them what the opponent does. You're teaching them what our scheme is. You're teaching them the technique they have to use. We've got to look at ourselves as a staff, as a profession, we're teaching. That's what we're doing on a daily basis. You put a hat and a whistle on, your classroom starts inside and continues outside onto the grass on a daily basis. The test is taken every Sunday. We have to make sure that, we don't mistake what we're doing. We want to motivate along the way, but it's teaching and instruction that's the most important thing.
Teams don't have a franchise quarterback. They spend this time on their coaches. So I know you don't want to talk about specific players, but
what positions are we evaluating?
do you agree that you have a franchise quarterback? Do you feel that you do have a franchise quarterback?
It's not going to be fair for me to go ahead and set expectations for any player on our roster at this point. Okay, I'm looking forward to getting them in and working with the spring and training camp and letting them establish their own identity and building around the players that show through competition that we can go ahead and improve.
Joe, will you determine what type of person you are as far as gender draft?
Smart, tough, fundamentally sound, and unselfish. Cam's, I don't want to spend much time talking to other people's staffs. I just know he was a tremendous help to me. I think they've got a great guy they're going to go forward with. Jason's a tremendous person with a wealth of experience as a player and as a coach. He's had success with multiple players and multiple systems, over the course of time. He understands the big picture of the game. He understands how to use the roster as a whole. He's a tremendous teacher, a great communicator, and he's been great with our staff. So I'm very excited having Jason in the building. I'm very pleased we're able to add him to the staff. He's a great resource for us. Oh, 1 second. I'll come right back to you.
All I know is my son.
I can only speak on since he's been the New York Giants going forward, but he comes to work every day with full of energy.
How did it take when you learned from the week that you established your own identity as a head coach?
Yeah, I mean,
I've worked multiple places. You know, it's important to me that wherever you work that you take from that place what you can use philosophically, schematically, and working with the personnel, but you have to do it in your own personality. I'm not trying to be anybody else, and that's just, you know, whatever I do, I'm going to be very direct, very honest with it, with the players, dealing with y'all, but at this point, I'm not trying to recreate anywhere else. I'm trying to be the New York Giants, and that's the best we can be. Say it one more time. I want to add great teachers. I want to add great coaches. And I want to add people that had great relationships with players, and he does all three of those. Can you be more specific?
As you do look at your roster,
Quarterback has been to the quarterback, but also have power movement. So it's interesting.
Everything's important. Nothing really overrides the other. I'd say right now, this time of year, you know, it's got to be paramount to get the players in. And that's doing our evaluations on our current roster, the free agents, the draft players. That's the biggest thing. It's about the players. So you can draw up some magical scheme if you want to, but if you don't have the guys to run, it's not going to matter. So really the most important thing at this point is identifying and being able to add the right players to your team and developing the ones you already have.
Joe, you brought up one thing. After a couple of months now, maybe more of an insider's view on what had been learned.
Well, I'd say in terms of the team and the organization, it's really reaffirmed everything I believed I knew on the outside. The family structure, the loyalty, the dedication, the commitment to the city and the area, the history and tradition that comes with being a New York Giant, that's all been reaffirmed, and that's a huge positive. In terms of the players, we have found an insider's view. We have dealt with the players. We've done all of our research on the players. I don't want to go into too many public analysis of that right now and create expectations on these guys publicly at this time, but we do have an insider's view at this point. Now, that'll become further clear as we go through spring and training camp and as the season develops as well.
Joe, you just got asked about Brett Beasley, but he was able to catch a couple of college jobs. That's something he had communicated to you, like, I'll take this job, but I'm also interested.
So I'll go ahead and be very clear with this as well in terms of how I'll answer questions relative to other jobs. I'm not going to speak on hypotheticals on any job. Just understand that when you hire good people, there's going to be interest. That's a positive. When people are desired on your staff, it means business is good. But if I comment on one person's hypothetical, that opens the door to every hypothetical ever, no matter what level of truth may or not carry with it. So I understand the interest. I fully respect the questions. Please understand going forward, I'm not being, closed-minded about it, but just I can't entertain every hypothetical.
Joe, you talked about wanting to have time before you comment publicly on any of your players. So at what point?
I'd say really after we start working with them on the field before I start making, any kind of public statement about a player. I think it's the thing we have to do to be fair to the players is get to work with them ourselves and develop our experiences with them, not just watch on tape their experiences with somebody else.
Former head coaches you had Houston, how they
I didn't try to hire anybody simply as being a former head coach. The experience they gained within those roles has been beneficial. I'm sure it'll be more beneficial at different times throughout the season. But I think we all bring our own experience and expertise in our different areas. The biggest thing is that we can all boil it down and blend it and create an identity for the New York Giants. That it's not about what we did somewhere else or how well it may have been successful. It's what's best for this team going forward. I've been very fortunate to hire the guys on my staff. Trust me, hiring a staff is not an easy thing to do. The most difficult thing to do is to be patient with it and make sure you hire the right guys. We took our time. I believe we have the right guys in place. You say it one more time. Sorry.
Burns, Jody Wright hired about them. Look at their experience.
I think there's just a certain mindset from guys that work through different. If you really kind of do the map of our entire staff, I had some kind of a personal relationship or professional relationship with everybody that we have on our staff. That was important to me because it's going to be enough to get our players on the same page. I didn't want to waste time this season, learning each other as coaches. That's going to be a challenge enough as it is. If I didn't work with you directly, but you work within a similar scheme or system, you have a better understanding of what I'm trying to accomplish and that there's a rhyme and a reason behind certain things we're going to do, which on the outside looking in or joining a staff for the first time may not always be very clear. But when you've gone through it and experienced success within that system, it's easier to embrace.
Head coach, how much from working under Nick Saban can you take to apply to your current coach?
I can only do what will be successful for the New York Giants. He's done a lot of things, been successful other places. I've gained a wealth of knowledge from him, but I've got to filter through that in the terms of what's relevant now going forward.
Important connection that they have. Obviously, Matt Chuck,
Yeah.
what he adds to the football team has always been very, very solid for us, from an intelligence standpoint, from a skill and game plan standpoint. So that's very positive. We do have a couple of young quarterbacks that we're really excited about.
Look, we're going to let our players compete, and whoever the best player is going to be on the field. So I don't have any scenario on letting anybody sit down if they're the best player for the job at the time. I'm not trying to create some hypothetical scenario where I think there's a timetable for any of our guys to contribute. I don't care how old or young you are. I really don't. I don't care what your experience is before you got in our building. All that's relevant is, can you help our team improve? And that's it. I think the opportunity to coach any position in football is beneficial in terms of you gain a different perspective on how it's looked at. Last year, in terms of the time management, that's always been something I've balanced. You know, working with special teams, you're always managing time and people. You know, delegating a lot of the responsibility last year with Cam Acord, who worked with us on special teams, Troy Brown, who worked with us on offense. That was a valuable experience to be able to give someone an assignment, make sure you've communicated on the front end how it's supposed to look, why it's important, and then when you walk away and come back, you know it's executed correctly, that the team can make progress. Every experience I've had coaching any aspect of football, working with any aspect of the organization, has been beneficial.
Joe, holding the number 4 pick, how do you feel philosophically about selecting a player versus trading back and acquiring assets?
You know, we're looking for the best move for the New York Giants at this point. The 4th pick is a great pick. There's a lot of beachfront property right there. But whatever the scenario that comes to be that is best for the Giants, whether that's trading back, moving back, you know, look, we're open to listen to anything. We don't have to do anything, but we'll listen to anything.
Last one. Obviously, Bill trades back all the time. What did you learn about the situation?
That you do what's best for your team at that moment.
We'll determine some of that as we not only feel them here, watch them move around here.
No, I actually began learning that when I first got into coaching under Sylvester Crew, Mississippi State. That was reaffirmed through working my time in Alabama, New England, other times. You don't want to create expectations for players that they have to go ahead and live up to. We're going to let them do that themselves with how they play and perform. You know, it's kind of like talking about injuries, you know, and you have to understand there's a reason why not to address injuries, and there's kind of two folds on this. You know, if I say Billy's got a hamstring and some expert out there says that's a 4 to 6 week injury, all right, when he doesn't come back till week 7 or 8, Billy must not be tough. And then when Davey has a hamstring a few weeks later, and they're completely separate injuries on different people and different medical grade, he comes back in 3 weeks. Well, he must be a lot tougher than Billy. So I don't want to create expectations out there that someone else has to live up to. Everybody's an individual case at all times, and we want to give them the respect to treat them as such and let them, you know, go ahead and work on what they do to improve as a player, to improve getting healthy to get back on the field. All right, and in terms of the evaluations publicly, I don't want to go out there and create a lot of expectations. Look, trust me, our players are going to have enough to come and improve. I promise you that. They're not walking into a cushy situation. They're going to come in, it's going to be very demanding, and we're going to expect a whole lot. So we're going to see on a daily basis who can meet those expectations. We have our own internal expectations. I promise you by the time they get to the questions you have, they're going to have already gone through the rigor in the building.
Hey Giants fans, Saquon Barkley here. You want to see more videos? Subscribe below.